Hi everyone, today I'm going to be giving you a tour of the vegetable garden in June, and so much has grown since last month. I can't believe it was only a month ago that I just showed you around. First, before we get into the garden, I wanted to show you this new entrance arbor that Aaron built completely from scratch. He did such a great job. It's so beautiful. Eventually we are going to have some beds on the sides so that we can grow a climbing plant to cover this beautiful arbor. Pretty happy with it. It's a really lovely entrance to our vegetable garden. As usual, let's start in this first bed to the left, which is where we have our Determinate tomatoes, and they have really bushed out a lot. I have been tying them to the trellis, but this is kind of the point where everything kind of goes crazy. Even with all of the tying that I'm doing, they're just growing so quickly, it's really hard for me to keep up with them. And I don't prune my Determinate tomatoes too much because I don't want to sacrifice any of that fruit, since Determinates tend to set a lot of their fruit all at once. So if I prune off a lot of those branches, I might be pruning off future fruit. So basically what I do with these for pruning is I'll just come and cut off a lot of the bottom leaves. So you can see the stem is pretty bare here, and I probably need to come in and just prune off this leaf and probably this leaf as well, because they're starting to droop and touch the ground, and I don't want that because that can lead to diseases. But other than that, I'm kind of just letting them go wild. Look at how many tomatoes are on this plant. This is my BHN 1021. I wish that Johnny's would name it a nicer name, because every time I have to say that name, it's just a real mouthful and it doesn't sound very good. But I do love this tomato. It's doing amazing. It seems to be the first one to develop out of all of my Determinate tomatoes, and most of these are hybrids. They're looking really nice, very uniform fruit. These ones here are my celebrity tomatoes, just a touch behind. The Ace 55 has just a couple of fruit setting here. And then I have Plum Regal tomatoes here. In front of and in between my tomato plants, we did interplant with marigolds and basils. I'm surprised that they're actually doing pretty well, because they did get attacked so horribly by slugs. But this basil is making it through really nicely. We've actually been picking a lot. Aaron has been making a lot of strawberry basil lemonades, which are incredible. And between this row and my tomato row in the back, I almost have enough basil to make a batch of pesto even, which is going to be wonderful. In the next bed, we have our sweet corn, which is just growing so quickly. It has really shot up, looking very good. We have thinned down to just one plant for each of the spots that we sowed. So there's one corn plant every square foot. And at this end of the bed, I did pop in some kind of melon. This is probably a honeydew melon, just so that it can trail off onto the edge. We have a lot of really nasty weeds on this side that I'm trying to get this melon to smother. I just don't know if it's going to be vigorous enough to do that, because it already looks kind of diseased, but better than nothing, I suppose. In the next bed, we've got our shallots and some red onions. The shallots are doing incredible. I don't think I had a single one die back. It looks like I did lose a couple of the red onions. You can see some like emptier patches here. I am so excited to harvest these shallots. I'm really curious as to when they'll be ready and how big they're gonna get, since I've never grown shallots before. And a lot of these onions are starting to size up pretty nicely too. We have this arched trellis that goes in between these two beds. On this side, we have our yard-long beans, which have started climbing up. They're about shoulder height now, so it's only going to be a matter of time before they're covering this entire arched trellis. On the other side, I have a cucuzzi gourd, and that has just been growing so quickly. The flowers are really interesting too. I don't have any open right now, but if I can snap a picture tonight, I think these might only open at night. I've only seen them open in the evenings, but they're really cool. And then on the other side, I do have a tomato plant, which I clearly need to prune. It is going pretty wild. I just haven't pruned too much because it's been raining like every day, and I know it's not the best to prune when it's wet because that can lead to diseases, but I do need to come in soon and cut that back a little bit. In this half of the bed where we have like this little tent, we had our hardneck garlic, which we harvested We got an incredible harvest off of those. So I amended the bed and popped in some new plants. I have a zucchini plant right in the center there. And then I have a honey nut in the corner, which will hopefully trail out into our pathway. And I'm covering this like I did with my other zucchini in my long row because it seemed to help a lot with the squash bugs and vine borers. And our other zucchini, which I'll show you later, is doing incredible. So I'm gonna do the same thing with this one. Even though it's only one plant, I figured I would protect it as well as possible. And once it gets bigger and outgrows this, then I'll just take the covers off and hopefully it'll be big enough by then that if it gets attacked by any pests, we'll already be getting stuff off of it. So we still have a few more hardneck garlics left. These ones are not quite ready yet because this is a different variety from what we harvested earlier. And then I also have a couple of pepper plants here. And then I have another melon plant that's starting to trail out. Now going back to the front and going across the right side of the raised bed garden. This first bed is mainly our pepper bed and they have grown so much. They're getting really tall and starting to set fruit now. If you saw my last harvest video, I pulled out a lot of the carrots that were going down the center of the bed. So now they have a lot more space to grow. We have a parsley plant up front here and lots of marigolds interspersed with these as well, which have started to bloom and they're looking really wonderful. We have this like regular marigold and then Aaron picked out these seeds for these giant marigolds and I've just been giving him a really hard time because look at how crazy this plant looks. It is kind of outgrowing our peppers. It's just growing so tall so quickly, and as tall as it is, it hasn't even bloomed yet. It's starting to bloom right now, but it just looks like a tree. It looks so crazy. But anyway, we do have a lot of peppers that are starting to form. So here are some shishito peppers. I guess I can actually harvest this soon. I have some more shishitos in our Greenstalk, so maybe I'll just grab this one along with some of the other ones sometime this week. Got a banana pepper growing there, little baby Ajvarski peppers, and this one was our first pepper to form, a cayenne pepper, and it looks like it's almost gonna start turning color soon too. Our Spanish mammoth peppers, Anaheim. So yeah, lots of different peppers there. They're all doing really well. Really excited for peppers. I hope we have a good pepper year. The next bed is our eggplants, and I have replaced the frost fabric with this tulle just because then the wind can get through and help to pollinate those flowers. And I think it was getting pretty warm in there because I was having some blossoms drop off. So I think this mesh will be a little better for them. You can see it's flowering now. But I think some of the flea beetles have gotten in anyway. So I think it's about time. I'll probably take this tulle off soon, just so that there is more airflow for these plants. They're already big enough at this point that I think they're off to have the best chance that they're gonna have against the flea beetles, and we'll see how they do. But you can see some of these leaves already have those telltale holes. But on the plus side, our peanuts are doing really well. They're just interspersed between our eggplants. They've come up really nicely. We have to come and thin them down to one plant per hole soon. Maybe I'll take off the tulle today and then we can get in there and thin these. But overall, looking pretty good. In our next bed, we have some herbs in the front here. I have a little row of scallions that I've been picking from in the front. Then we have some cilantro that has gone to seed. I'm just leaving it because it's really pretty and it's good for the pollinators. You can see all these little hover flies hanging out around these small flowers. Flies are actually a really important pollinator. Everyone thinks about bees, but flies are actually really important too. And then we have our dill, which has gotten so tall. It is basically as tall as me. And I mean, I know I'm not that tall, but I'm still over 5 feet. So these things are massive. Look at the head on that. Looks like fireworks. So cool. I'm slowly forcing myself to like the taste of dill, which is really great because these plants are just so beautiful that I do just want to have them in my garden every year. The rest of the bed is basically leeks, which are doing really nice. Oops. Oh gosh, there's a wasp there. All right, there's a wasp there. I'm not going to get too close. So hopefully you can see from here, but the leeks are sizing up nicely, getting a little bit thicker, and maybe another month or two before they're ready to harvest. All right, I'm going to tread lightly around this guy. I don't want to get stung. In the next bed, we have this beautiful dahlia plant. This plant overwintered from last year, and it's just so vigorous and beautiful. It's so early in the season, like barely any of the dahlias in my cut flower garden that I started from seed have started blooming, but because this one overwintered, it just bloomed so early and it just has a ton of blooms on it. I love how this plant has bright yellow flowers, but the foliage is really dark. It just makes for a really beautiful contrast. All around the dahlias in this first third of the bed I have some soybean plants. And oh, it looks like these are starting to put off flowers. I've never grown soybeans before, so I'm not really sure like what the timing and the growth and all that is going to be like. These kind of remind me of peanut plants actually, how they have flowers kind of like in the nooks like that. Really cool. It's going to be fun to see how these develop. Looking really nice and healthy. In this last bed, we have 3 Roma tomato plants. Those have been setting fruit. Ton of fruit on this one right here. And because we've had so much rain this year, they've been growing really quickly and very evenly, not a lot of blossom end rot. So they all look like pretty perfect tomatoes. We've got another cattle panel trellis connecting these 2 beds, and at the base of this one we have Armenian yard-long cucumbers. They're kind of small right now. We had to replant them a couple times because they kept getting taken out by slugs. And then on the other side we have our wax gourd, which took a really long time to germinate, but they're finally up now. And once they get going, they'll grow really quickly. Before we move on to the back garden, I'll just go over this side area really quickly. We have our potatoes in pots here. The plants are starting to look pretty terrible, and I can't tell if it's because they're diseased or because it's getting close to harvest time. This pot looks the worst, so maybe we will flip it out in the next week or so and see how it's doing in there. I'm just curious to see if this all actually worked. On this trellis, we have some rattlesnake pole beans, which have grown so quickly and they're basically covering the entire trellis now. And it is very nearly bean season here. Tons of flowers on here and some baby beans as well. Our echinacea has started blooming. So beautiful. What a bright pink color. Got some volunteer sunflowers. I didn't plant any sunflowers here this year, but we have a ton popping up just from seeds that dropped last year, which is really great. Our hyssop, which also is getting huge, perennialized from last year. And then these 2 plants here, those are Nicotiana plants, and they're looking so much bigger than the ones in my cut flower garden. They are getting huge. I'm so interested to see what those flowers look like. And to smell them also, because they're supposed to be very nice and fragrant. And on this second trellis, we have our peas, mostly snow peas, and it's just about time to rip these out. Now that it's hit June and it's 90 degrees a lot of the days, the peas really do not like the heat. You can see that a lot of the lower leaves have powdery mildew. The actual pods just are not looking great, and they're kind of getting a little bit more fibrous. I'm just saving these larger ones here, and I'm gonna save the seeds from them. So just open them out and save those seeds so that I can replant them in the fall or next year. I almost forgot to go over this area in the middle. We have 2 smaller beds that have blueberries and strawberries. The strawberries are pretty much fading out now. But we did pick a handful of blueberries the other day. I didn't even get a photo because we just popped them right into our mouths. But we have some blueberries that are ripening now. I just put these bags over them so the birds won't get to them, but they were just so good. They were really big. Again, I think just because of all the rain we've had this year, they got really plump. They were probably like twice the size of these ones here. Oh, I do see one strawberry that I'm gonna pick. And then in our Greenstalk here, we have peppers on the bottom row. Here you can see some more shishito peppers and they're almost ready to pick. This plant here has a bigger one. And then we have some dwarf tomato plants. This one has a bunch of fruit that's all ripening about the same time now. And we have some jalapeno peppers. I've noticed that the cucumbers I've planted here look really sickly. I think maybe there just isn't enough airflow for them, so they got diseased really quickly. So I'll probably pull those out soon and probably pop something else in, because even the fruit that is forming there, it looks like really weird and deformed. So I think it's just not gonna put on very high quality fruit. So I'll switch that out for something else. In the next couple of rows, we have beans, which are starting to produce now. You can see a bunch of baby beans forming there. We're just around the corner from bean season. And we have some purple beans here. Here's another one of our blueberry plants. This one is a little bit behind the other one. It has more blueberries, but they're not as large. But still, I'm pretty excited for that. Blueberries are probably one of my favorite fruits, so I'm hoping that one day I can grow a ton more blueberries than this. Now we can move on to the back garden, and I'm gonna start all the way on the left at our zucchini bed because I'm just absolutely loving it. It's probably my favorite area of the vegetable garden right now because I'm just so thrilled that it seems like we're having good zucchini luck this year. So glad that we covered these plants with the row cover early on. It just made a world of difference and our plants are looking amazing. In the past few days, I think we've harvested like 10 zucchinis, which is incredible. So in the front, we have a honey nut squash. I can see a couple of little honey nuts forming here. Then the first 4 plants are hybrid zucchinis. We have 2 yellow ones and 2 green ones, and those were the first ones to produce for us. And we harvested, I think 2 this morning, but I need to come back out here again because there is more to harvest. Here is some of this Golden Glory zucchini, which I absolutely love. It's so delicious and buttery. This zucchini is called Emerald Delight. We had a few pollination issues early on, which is why that one's a little shriveled. But you can see there's one right behind it that is ready to pick today as well. Then this yellow one, that one is just about ready to pick as well. And then we've got a huge one on this plant. And then next we have this gray zucchini. We picked a massive one today already off of these plants. So in total, after I pick the ones that are on the plants right now, I think we'll have picked half a dozen from just today, which is amazing. We have never had this kind of success with zucchini and I'm thrilled about it. In the back here we have some like pumpkins and winter squash kind of going crazy and taking over, but I am all for it. We have a kabocha squash, a Cinderella pumpkin, and a spaghetti squash. And yeah, none of them have set fruit yet that I've seen, but they're doing great and growing a lot. Very, very happy to see that. Most of the next row we have tarped off to kill the weeds for the season. We'll probably plant in it for the fall. But in the front here, we had enough space for our A-frame trellis, and we just put a couple of cucumber plants on there. And these are pickling cucumbers, and it looks like I have one that's ready to pick. I've picked only one so far, so this is our second cucumber. I'm gonna have to come get this with gloves on because those little spikes on the cucumbers always get me. But that is a perfect size for a pickling cucumber. And I see one on the other side too that probably needs another day or two, and hopefully soon we will be able to make some pickles. I also put a cantaloupe here to trail out along the tarp. Hopefully the tarp doesn't get too hot for it to grow on, but I figured I would let it sprawl out along this space. Here is our asparagus and strawberry row. Those are pretty much done for the year. We'll probably just get a few random spears here and there. Actually, it looks like there's a ton to pick today. We haven't been out here as diligently to harvest because it just keeps raining every evening, so we're not coming out in the evenings to harvest as much, which is usually when we do it. But you can see most of the asparagus has ferned out and has filled in, and they're even developing their little berries, which is so crazy. I never would have known that asparagus had berries like this until we saw it grow on our own. Now onto this back area. In this first row, we have a bunch of bush beans, and also in the middle, you can't really see right now, but we have sweet potatoes in there. I planted a couple of borage plants on the ends because the bees really love them and they have just started blooming, and I absolutely love those blue flowers. Blue flowers are so special because blue is such an uncommon color in flowers. I have some Sahara Rudbeckia here that came back from last year, which is really cool because those are zone like 8+, I think, so I didn't think that they would come back. They're absolutely beautiful. I love the colors. I told you that bees love borage. They're around it right now, even with me right there. So I actually just saw from the other side, I think I saw a dragon tongue bean that's ready to pick, to see if I can find it. But in the middle here, we have our sweet potatoes. The beans are kind of covering them up at the moment, but the beans won't be here for long, and I'm sure the sweet potatoes will take over. So we have two kinds of beans. On one side we have, I believe, blue lake bush beans, and then on this side we have dragon tongue beans. This might have been the one I saw from the other side. Oh no, this is definitely it. This is the bean I saw. Our first bean. Look at how beautiful those dragon tongue beans are. Gorgeous. Tastes like a bean. Got another one here. I'm gonna bring this one for Aaron. In the next row, we have our broccoli and also two artichokes on the edges. The artichokes are doing amazing. Really thrilled. I thought that those were a goner for sure after the slug attacks this spring, but they're doing great. Not sure if we'll get any artichokes this year, but we'll see, maybe in the summer or so. I don't know what time of year they're actually supposed to fruit. And then all these broccolis, I've already harvested the main heads, but I left the plants here in the hopes that they would create side shoots, which it looks like they're doing right now. So this was probably the first broccoli that I picked. You can see that's where the center is where I picked it. And now I've got all these little mini shoots that I can come pick later today or tomorrow. And with a handful of those, you've got almost like the equivalent of a head of broccoli. So it's kind of cool. You get like a little bonus crop. In the next row, we had some garlic that we pulled up the other day. And we also pulled up a bunch of carrots. I harvested that in my last video. And we also harvested our very first golden beets the other day, which looked really incredible. I'm so excited to eat them. And we have a ton more here that are looking amazing. So I think I'm gonna have to not write off golden beets because it was probably just us. It was probably just user error that we couldn't grow them in the past because for some reason this year, they're just doing great. Maybe they just knew that I was like about to give up on them and they just gave it their all this year. They're looking amazing. We've got a few more heads of garlic that are not ready to pull yet here, and then we have a patch of potatoes. I planted these potatoes about a month after the ones that I have in those black pots in the raised bed garden. So these are a little behind. You can tell that they're looking a lot healthier and they're starting to flower, which I think usually means that you have like about a month before the potatoes are ready to harvest. So maybe the ones in my containers are ready right now. The next row is my row of indeterminate tomatoes, and I'm pretty proud of them. I have been staying on top of trellising and pruning them, and can you believe that they have reached the top since last month? I think last month I was showing how to like wrap the twine around them, and now like the sun golds are all the way at the top. The purple Russians have more than reached the top, and they're just growing over now. And they're just looking so good. Barely any disease on these. You can tell I've been pruning off a lot of those bottom leaves. We've had a handful of sun golds already. And we can probably pick this one now. Little treat for me. And the tomatoes are just producing so much fruit. That sun gold tomato is so good. So we have not had our first ripe, like larger tomato yet. We've only had cherries so far. So I'm really excited for that first big tomato. I wonder what variety it's gonna be. My guess is it's going to be one of these purple Russians. This one looks like it's starting to blush right now, which I'm thrilled about. I'm really excited to have these. Look at that group of tomatoes. Isn't that incredible? And then we've got some more here. Here's another one of the purple Russian plants. I think this method of trellising does so well, especially for this variety. Some varieties, I don't know why, but the leaves just are really droopy, and this is definitely a variety that does that. You can see how they're kind of like shriveled up and they hang down, and it's not because it's diseased, because it does this even as a seedling. It's just the way the plant grows. So being able to trellis it with this twine like this and just pruning off all of those bottom leaves, I think it's just done really well for the plant. And all my basil plants, again, I'm just so surprised that they have not died, because they looked so miserable after those slugs were eating them. I thought for sure that they were dead, and I honestly just like wrote them off, and I thought I was just gonna have to reseed all my basil, but it's just thriving, and I have to come out here like every other day and just pinch off the tops so that it won't go to seed, and so that the branches will bush out a little bit more. And I'll just give this to Aaron for his lemonade today. So we've got just a couple more rows to go. This is mainly our cucumber row, although I do have just a couple of straggler tomato plants on the end here. And like I mentioned before, we picked our first cucumber the other day. So really all these summer crops are starting to come in. The spring things are fading out, and got some more baby cucumbers on the way. Look at this funny long one. And this one is the Suyo long cucumber. Oh my gosh, it looks crazy. Look at all those wrinkles and those little spikes. And it's so long already, even as a little baby. But I do really like these cucumbers. I don't know why, but I think I'm even more excited for cucumbers this year than I am for tomatoes. I know everybody loves tomatoes, but I just love having cucumbers. We can snack on them all the time. I can make one of my favorite cucumber dishes, smashed cucumbers. I'm so excited to have that as a side for like every meal again. Here we have another winter melon. And then we have our Chinese okra and our bitter melon. Bitter melon's not my favorite plant, but they are really fun to grow, and I like how pretty these leaves are. Next we have our row of hundreds of onions. I have 3 different varieties here, and they all seem to be doing really well. I've noticed that lately, these red ones especially, they are starting to form their onion bulbs, which is really cool. I hope we have enough onions this year that we can get through more than like a month, because last year we did not have nearly enough, and they're just looking really good. And last but not least, our last row here, we have mostly okra. I also put in a couple of giant sunflowers back here where I had some empty spaces. We have a few different varieties of okra, but nothing's really producing yet, so I'll kind of go over it as it gets a little bigger. I put this cage over them just because last year we did have trouble with deer eating our okra seedlings, so I just put this over here for now, but they'll grow out of it soon. I just like those pretty leaves, and you can already start to see that they are starting to form little flower buds on them. Well, that is going to be it for this month's garden tour. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope your gardens are doing wonderful, and I'll see you again in the next video.